Hi, I'm Helena from Dream Weaver Jewellery. Today I'm going to show you my tips for making some little weaves, and I like to keep the weaving wire at 90 degrees to the base wire. That's really important. I'm using 0.4mm weaving wire here, and generally when we start we're just going to wrap 3 times around that base wire, and that will just secure it. So the most simple weave with 2 wires, base wires, is going to be the 5-2 weave, which means 5 around the bottom and obviously 2 around both wires. So when we bring the second base wire in, we need to make sure we leave a very tiny gap between the 2 wires, what I call the breathing space. Now this just allows the weaving wire to come back through those wires and not pull them all out and distort them and make the tension go all horrid. So you need to kind of go up the back of the 2 base wires with your thumb, kind of scraping along the wire slightly, and then fold it down. You're trying to think of 2 long flat sections rather than a loop all of the way around the wire. So I'm just pushing those together with my thumb, and I like to make the bend first and then come back through the weaving wire in the same direction. And that's our first one done. So again, we're going to do 5 around, and you'll see I'll put a bend in and go past the bottom bottom base wire before I come back through, and I just find this keeps the tension a little bit easier. So when we've got 5, we're going to straighten those wires a little bit, push all the weaves together, make sure it's nice and neat, and now I'm just going to adjust for that space, and we're going to go round twice. So making that bend, pushing them together, then I make a bend again upwards and back through the middle, and again 5 more around the bottom, and we're just going to continue that weave until you've got the length that you need for your project. So let's think about adding in a 3rd wire. Now these weaves all have different names, and it doesn't really matter what you call them. I call this the chicken feet because it's what it reminds me of. I don't actually know if they have specific names, but just remember to keep those spaces between the wires. Now this one you're going to come up through the top and the middle one, because we're going to do a wrap around the base 2 wires. Then you're going to come up the back of all 3 and down between the bottom and the middle wire. This means you've just put a wrap around the top 2 wires. My camera wasn't focusing very well, but you can see they're quite wide loops around those base wires. They're quite oval shaped, so I just want to squash them down at this point to make sure the tension doesn't go all off. And you can use nylon pliers, or someone did comment, can you use flat pliers? And yes, of course you can, but you just have to be a little bit more careful with them to make sure you're not going to mark your weaving wire. So just to complete the last of the chicken foot, you're going to come up between the top and the middle one and down over both at the bottom. And with all weaves it's best to just secure them again to the very bottom base wire. So we usually put 3 or maybe 5 wraps around the bottom just to keep all the little patterns separated, which looks pretty. So when you hear somebody on YouTube saying do so many repeats of that pattern, what it's probably going to mean is that you do the main pattern like the chicken feet, and you do repeats of that pattern. So here we'll have done 3 repeats by the time I've finished. So at this point, for example, we have 2 repeats. I also like to just keep flattening my weaves very gently. You can see I'm not putting much pressure on here, and it's best as a beginner to do that with nylon pliers so you don't mark your wires. So let's move on to a 4th wire this time. I don't know what this weave is called, but basically we'll just kind of do the pattern and we'll see what we think. So this time we're going to go 2 round the bottom 2, and then we're going to come up between those 2 wires at the top, and we're going to go 2 around the middle too. And you're going to come all the way up the back over the top 2. And you'll notice with most of these particular weaves I'm doing, we're going in the same direction all the time. Now you will change in some different weaves, and I'll show you those a little bit later on. So to come back down the row then, you're going to have to come up between the top 2, which is essentially putting 1 loop round the back, but this just means you do still weave in the same direction. So we're going down over those middle 2. And again, you're going to loop up over the second wire up, just that one, so you can come down 2 over the front. Now obviously it's going to look different from the front to back, but as long as it looks the same on the front, it really doesn't matter. And we're going to just push those together really well. So that's one type of pattern. Let's just secure the base wire again and move on to the next one. So this one's going to be a good test of your tension, because we're going to go across all of the base wires. So 2 at the bottom, and then you're going to go up 3 wires and through, down over all 3 wires, up across the back of all 4, and down the front of all 4, and then obviously on the way back down we're going to do the same thing. So put the bend in, come up between the top 2, keep pushing those weaves together, it's very important. Down the bottom, through the middle, down the bottom, and then we're going to secure with 3 wraps around the base wire again. And this one's especially important to keep flat on every single pattern that you make, because if it goes astray, your tension's going to be off. Now this is quite a tricky one as well, so we're just going to wrap once around each wire. And this makes a very dense pattern, so if you're doing you know, a bail, or you want to add a really thick section of weave, this one's going to be quite a nice one to repeat. So you're just coming up the back of 2 and round the top. So if you're wanting to keep this weaving the same way round, you can also draw the wire right to the bottom across the front and make a bit of a break between the looped wires, and that looks really nice. And you can pop that in and just continue going in the same direction all the time. Just going to show you a couple of repeats of this, because a standalone it doesn't look very nice, but if you do quite a bit of this, it's like I say, a very dense weave, and it does look quite pretty. So I had a blonde moment here and started weaving in the opposite direction. But my plan was to show you that you can put 2 wraps around all 4 wires, and that will look quite pretty. And then by this stage I realised my mistake, because I couldn't continue in the same direction. So I just did a bit of a figure 8 around here. I mean, you can't really tell, so it doesn't really matter. So I left it in the video just to kind of show you that it can still be rectified if you've sabotaged it. Now it's starting to come together. You can see what a dense section of weave that would be if you wanted to use that for anything. So if you're wanting to come back down the other way, like I said earlier, you will have to go in a bit of a figure eight. So I'm looping around the same direction, and then on this next wire down I'm going back in the opposite direction, and you'll find that this kind of opens out this weave. Ugh, gone off camera again. Honestly, Helena, that is not helpful. But you can see it's starting to push them over because those little loops are kind of going slightly outwards at opposite angles to one another. So you're never going to really be able to press those completely together. I just decided to attach to the base wire again and show you that once more, to kind of make my point that it won't stay together that well. So you're going to do the figure eight on the bottom bit and come over that second wire up, in the same direction on the other three. And then to come back down, you're going to do the same direction on the top one, and then figure eight again back down to the next one. Just to basically, you're just turning your wire around the opposite direction. As long as it looks correct from the front, it really doesn't matter how you do this. If you cock it up, it's not the end of the world, you know. You're only going to see one side of this, so don't, you know, beat yourself up too much if it goes a little bit astray. So this is my favourite weave. I use this one quite a lot across either 3 or 4 weaves. It's basically the chicken feet weave but with an extra wire. So all we're doing is one wrap around the 2 base wires, one around the middle 2, and all the way up the back, one around the top 2. And again, this one is in the same direction, so to come back through you just only need to come round that 3rd wire up just the once, round 2 again, round the 2nd wire, and then we're at the bottom, so we can finish off the base as usual with 3 or 4 wraps. And there we have our little sample piece. There's lots to play with here. And the one thing I would like to mention is how to finish off your wire. Now, if you want to see 3 wraps, which I do, I make a 4th one, and then you have to hold the weaving wire quite tight with your thumb right on that base wire, and you're going to wiggle that weaving wire around and around with quite a lot of pressure on it till it snaps. And then you can see it just leaves you the tiniest little tail. You might have to adjust it a little bit here and there, but generally that snaps off so it doesn't scratch or cause any nasties for you. So you might be wondering how you'd use these little weaves. This is something I made a couple of nights ago. So that little one there is the 5-2 weave that we did at the very start. Now that's been oxidised and polished, which is why it looks that nice kind of antique-y look, which I much prefer. It really brings the weaves out, so you can always watch my video about that. I'll put the link below for you. And you can see the side weave is that double chicken feet kind of weave that I made earlier. Now I did this as a claw setting. You don't have to do it this way, but I do like to remove my stones for polishing. I hope you like this one. It's pretty. It's on my website, ready for sale now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please comment below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd be really grateful, and I'll be making a lot more free tutorials in the coming months. You can also purchase written PDF tutorials from me that you can follow along at your own pace. These have loads of pictures and explanations to help you learn some new techniques, and each one is aimed at learning a new skill. I'd also really love for you to join my Facebook group. It's called Wire Weaving for Beginners, and you can share your work and see all of everybody's latest creations. And finally, if you'd like to support my channel further, you might also consider hitting the Buy Me a Coffee link below. Here you can make a small donation so I can continue spending time making new free tutorials for you. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much. Bye for now.